What's going on, football fans? Hey, look, Sam's here. What does that mean?
Hey, how's it going?
It means we are breaking down the top quarterbacks in the NFL draft. You ready?
Oh, absolutely. So we're changing up a little bit this year. Usually we do top five, but this is such a deep class. We got to do six.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these top six quarterbacks, and there is not a lot of separation from 4 to 6. So we just decided, you know what? Let's do top six. Let's get chaotic with this. And it fits because last year was so chaotic at times, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The chaos continues, people. Okay, number one, we all know it.
Easy.
It's Caleb Williams.
Easy. I don't think he's ever like you can undersell him. He's athletic freak, good arm, good like the biggest knock on him is that he's like a big play hunter and he holds onto the ball. I don't think that's a problem. Like, yeah,
But
is it
not
going to
the
cause
only knock on him.
not the only knock, but is it going to cause turnovers? Sure, but like you're going to get big plays out of it. He's a generational prospect. I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but I truly think he's a generational prospect, and he is going to be fine no matter where he goes. Not every quarterback is like that, where they can go to any team and they can be successful, but I think he's one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all heard it. Does he really have the personality that's going to mesh with the locker room? But look, he had an interesting recruitment as well. It's been talked about when he was coming out of high school. I mean, we've heard from coaches and other players. He gets along fine in the locker room. I think he's going to be fine. It's just, it is a little different how he's processing things. Yes, the thing at the combine where he didn't participate in the medical, and that's the first time we ever heard it. But is it really that big of a deal? I don't know. When it comes time to play, he's always at the top of his game. And when you watch the games that he did, especially against some of the top teams in the Pac-12 this year, I mean, he played very well. It's not his fault that his defense, well, sucked.
Right, right. And I think, going back on the not doing the physical at the combine, like you got to imagine you're getting a physical exam by 32 different doctors. Like I'd rather just do the one if I'm going to be honest with you. And he's going to go number one. So why go through all of the hoops and like I don't think that's an issue. Like let's be honest, like I would skip out on it too. That I don't think that's a big deal.
Yeah,
But it
and it's
does
not a,
shed some light on like just kind of his personality and the whole wanting to be a part owner of the team when he gets drafted, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure, he's building his brand, things like that. That's important for some people, but when it comes to the on the field abilities, you can't miss with him.
yeah, I mean, with Caleb Williams, is he taking a unique uh, turn as opposed to other prospects? Sure. But again, if he wasn't a problem in college, I mean, he's going to be with grown men and they've dealt with a lot of different personalities. They'll figure it out. The head coach is going to figure this out. Now, you're saying he's going to go number one. The question is, what team is going to take him? Do we think it's going to be the Bears? I definitely think it will be. What about you, Sam?
I don't think the Bears would be able to miss or skip out on him. I think he's too good of a quarterback, and I know Justin Fields has shown flashes, and I'm still a believer in Justin Fields. But
Yeah,
just
I am too.
comparing the two quarterbacks, even if talent level was similar, you have more time with Caleb Williams to have him on a rookie contract, and it just makes so much more sense to go with Caleb Williams. I don't think there's any kind of draft compensation that's realistic that would make you want to consider not getting him.
Yeah, and the thing for me is Justin Fields, he just needs a change of scenery. I think if he gets on a new team, learn from other coaches, I think he'll be close to his potential than where he was with the Bears. And also with Caleb Williams, this is going to be a different situation than when Justin Fields came to the Bears because the Bears literally had nothing. In
Right.
Chicago right now, what do they have? They have a very solid defense, and they just re-signed Jalen Johnson. They re-signed Montez Sweat during the season. You have a number one receiver and a number one tight end in Cole Kmet, who's a very solid tight end, and DJ Moore, who is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL right now. The offensive line needs to be worked on. And guess what? The Bears have one of the biggest uh, caps in the free agency this year. So they're going to be able to sign their guys. Oh, by the way, they have another top 10 pick, so they can just take best player available, and maybe one of the receivers falls to them, or maybe it might be the top tackle, and somehow he gets to them. So the Bears are in a better situation with Caleb Williams coming in as a rookie than where they were with Justin Fields as a rookie. I just think that's the recipe to take Caleb Williams number one overall, especially when you have a guy that has generational talent like his. Now, will he be a generational player? That remains to be seen. And please stop comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. There's only one Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be Caleb Williams. Can we stop doing this to ourselves?
I both agree and disagree. I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes, but when you're trying to say what can he do, he makes some of those Mahomes-esque type plays, right? There's off-platform launches of a football, like so. Just trying to say, okay, just trying to conceptualize his play.
I know.
I don't think he's Mahomes, and in fact, throughout this whole the top six, I have a lot of comparisons to quarterbacks that I don't think necessarily this is exactly how they play. And I think it's just a good description of them. So, no, he is not Mahomes. No one is Mahomes. No one can be Mahomes.
All right, number two. And we've actually had some debate on number two lately between Drake May and Jaden Daniels. Who do you have as your number two quarterback, Sam?
I think it's a hard conversation. Like, what criteria are you using to define these guys? Like, I think Drake May has a higher ceiling, but Jaden Daniels with his athletic ability has a higher floor. So it really depends on kind of who you think that this player would go to and where their fit would be. I would honestly put Drake May at 2 because of what he can do and his build and his ability to throw the football, his accuracy. He does have some issues with footwork. There's some questions about, like decision making, things like that. He wasn't with a great offensive coordinator, didn't have a lot of talent at North Carolina, but I think he has a lot of potential to be that prototypical modern day quarterback. So I have him as number 2 because I can project him as being the second best quarterback in this class. Whereas Jaden Daniels, I think, has a high floor, really athletic, really talented, fast, able to move. But I'm a little worried about his arm. I think he has good accuracy, but he doesn't have the strongest arm. I am a little worried about his quickness to take off in the NFL and how it's going to adjust at the NFL with a higher speed and higher talent level. He is still going to outrun everyone in the NFL, but we saw it with Justin Fields. When he runs, people catch him a little bit quicker than they did at Ohio State. That's just how it works, right? Not that Jaden Daniels is slow by any means, but I think Drake May has a better potential. So that's why I have Drake May at 2.
Do you think Daniels and May made a mistake not throwing at the combine, showing off the arm strength?
No, I don't think so. I think the combine itself it's a really good opportunity for 90% of the draft class. And the opportunity that's bad for is the top 10, like the top 10% of athletes. Like, I don't think it adds anything. It can only hurt you if you're one of those, really top 20 picks. Well, top 15, I would say. So I don't think it's a bad thing that they didn't throw at the combine. I really think the biggest thing for the combine for these kind of prospects is the interviews. So I think it's fine for them to wait till their pro days.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. I have Drake May as a number 2 quarterback because I think he does have the higher upside than Daniels. Drake May, I remember this guy is a North Carolina legacy. His father played in North Carolina. I think one of his brothers was on the national championship basketball team, and another brother plays baseball there. So it was no surprise when he went to North Carolina. Was a surprise when he originally committed to Alabama, then flipped to North Carolina, but that doesn't matter. First year as a starter, threw for over 30 touchdowns. This year took a little bit of a step back, but as you said, the talent of North Carolina, it doesn't compare to other higher, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't
higher profile.
Yeah. Schools. But yeah, he does a lot of the intangibles that you want for an NFL quarterback. It's just going to be, can you develop him properly? More than likely going to go to the Commanders at number 2. And I'm going to say this one more time. Will you please change that name, Washington? It's the dumbest name I've ever heard for a sports team.
But so
I digress. I digress. Can they develop him properly? We shall see. And with Jaden Daniels, I've been following him since his freshman year at Arizona State when he was being coached by Herm Edwards. Had a very, very good freshman year. Sophomore gets hit by COVID, probably worse than any other quarterback in college football. They only played 6 games that year, so he lost basically an entire year development. Junior year wasn't as good. Transfers to LSU, has a very solid first year at LSU, and then comes back for a 5th year because of the COVID year, and basically has a Joe Burrow type season where solid first year at LSU and then just explodes, wins the Heisman Trophy. And yeah, you were absolutely right. A highly athletic kid, but can that athleticism translate to being a good quarterback in the NFL? I mean, we've seen it with Lamar Jackson, where he turned out to be a very good quarterback as well as being a very good athlete. And we've seen with Justin Fields, where he's an okay quarterback. So that's going to be a big one too. And there's a discussion on where Daniels is going to go in the draft. Most people are thinking number 3, but again, just like the conversation with number 1, who takes him at number 3, which we can get to later.
Right. The thing I don't like the comparison of Jaden Daniels to Lamar Jackson because I think that
I wasn't
underplays
comparing him. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that he's another ultra athletic quarterback. But yeah, I don't think you can compare Daniels to anybody at this point. I think he's just his own category at this point.
I think comparing him, it's a very common comparison to Lamar Jackson, though. And I think that underplays how talented of a thrower Lamar was coming out. There was all of the talk of him moving to wide receiver, but he always, even at Louisville, he had a good arm. He had good accuracy at Louisville. Played in a pro style, modern day pro style system at Louisville.
Bobby Petrino was the head coach there.
Yeah.
The only issue that he had at LSU was his receivers dropped about a 1/4 of the passes.
Right. And that's another one of the issues about with Daniel was he solely responsible for his year, or was it the fact that he had 2 top 20 receivers catching for him this year?
Which is another thing with Joe Burrow too, because remember Burrow played with
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and I feel so bad.
Terrence Marshall, all of which went in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft.
Yeah, so like I one of my criteria, it's not a good criteria. It's not objective in any sense, but did they light it up in college, or are you constantly trying to make excuses for their college performance? Right, that's an important translation to, in my mind. Like Caleb Williams is someone who lit it up in college, and you see that and you're like, oh wow, this guy has a wow factor. Like I can just see that he has talent. Right, Jaden Daniels, the same exact kind of thing. Like, oh, I saw talent explode from him, right? Whereas some of these other guys, you start writing question marks and say, hey, maybe it's because he didn't have a good offensive coordinator, maybe he didn't have great talent, but why wasn't he elevating the team? Why wasn't so that's part of the thing. It's a dumb, subjective way to measure people, but I think it's reasonable. Like if you were never the guy in college, what are the odds are that you're going to be the guy in the NFL?
Yeah, and there are definitely points to where, some teams just have a complete disaster, like Daniels with his last season at Arizona State. That team was just a disaster.
Right,
Which, okay, maybe we can forget about that year just a little bit, but unless something like that happens, you definitely have to factor that in as well. All right, let's move on from 4 to 6. And the first guy I want to talk about is J.J. McCarthy, the national champion for Michigan. Man, where do you start with McCarthy? Where do you start?
I have him as my 6. So I don't want to say I'm a J.J. McCarthy hater, but I am not a believer in J.J. McCarthy. I know there's flashes of the talent, and he's one of those guys who falls into the, if he had it, why didn't I see it in college? And will he be able to do that in the NFL? Right. He has talents. He's mobile. He's quick. He can throw the ball. He has good accuracy, but why didn't I see it in college? Like you can make the excuse that Michigan was a powerhouse running team and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like if you watch him when it's passing situations and things like that, there's always something that you're just like, I wish I saw more from him. Right. So out of him versus Bo Nix and Michael Penix, I'm not a big fan of him. And don't think he's a first round prospect. I think if he goes somewhere, he has a chance to be, one of those fringe starters or be a long time backup or something like that. But I don't think he's the guy, right? And not to compare him in his play style, but as a prospect, he reminds me of Mac Jones, right? It's a guy that you see and it's like, okay, well, he doesn't do things well, like, but he's a plug and play starter. He's going to be okay. You can build around a team around him. That's how I feel when people say about JJ McCarthy. Like, yeah, well, he's not this super strong arm, super athletic guy, but if you build a team around him, then he can be good. Like, that's just not enough for me.
So I actually have him as my fourth best, and that's only because I think he's got more upside than Nix and Penix. But that's just my opinion based on what I saw, because I saw him a little more often at Michigan because, well, I'm a Maryland guy and of course the Big Ten. But I digress. This was somebody that was a 5-star recruit, so clearly he's got talent. When he was asked to throw, I saw him make some very good throws to Michigan, but you have to remember he had a great offensive line. He had probably the best running back duo the last 2 seasons with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and he had some decent receivers as well. And of course, you have Jim Harbaugh as his head coach. Now, do I think he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely. Do I think he's a top 15 prospect? Absolutely not. I would not take him until the later half of the first round. But unfortunately, that's probably not what's going to happen. He's probably going to end up being a top 15 pick, probably going to be the 4th quarterback off the board. Let's be honest with ourselves. Could he be a starting quarterback? Yes, I definitely think he could be. But there are some questions as to if he's a first-round prospect, why were there times when Michigan went more to their running game despite him having good quarterback traits? Like the game against Penn State, he did not attempt a pass in the second half. I think that's what they keep saying.
Yeah, that's how I feel about him. I think it's reasonable to put him above Penix and Bo Nix just because he's 21 and they're both, Penix has had his long history and Bo Nix was a 5th-year senior at Oregon, so there's more time to develop him, and he does have good traits.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things like I didn't see it in college, so what are the like? Why? How do I expect that I'm going to see it in the NFL? And it's not to hate on him. I'm very negative about him, but I think he has a lot of good traits and he can go somewhere. I think he'd be best off as a backup for a couple years. And then if you need it, then we can see how things go, right? But I think if he ends up going in the top 15 and he's expected to be a starter year 1, I don't think we're going to see that great of a play from him.
McCarthy's definitely a guy that if he does not go to the right place, I mean, we're talking another Mac Jones. That's pretty much what we're talking about. We were talking another Mac Jones, except he's not going to have the best rookie season out of his draft class.
Right. And the only difference is that he can move around in the pocket a little bit, and Mac Jones is just a statue.
Yeah, to me, McCarthy's the better quarterback of those two, but they do have very similar stories if it turns out that the wrong team takes him. All right, let's move on to Bo Nix, who I have over Michael Penix only because Nix has been healthier in college. And Bo Nix, this guy was an Auburn legacy. His dad played there, so he goes to Auburn, has a very successful freshman season, and just wasn't able to build on that. By year 3, it just did not end well for him. For him and the coaching staff, they just had their disagreements. It didn't work out. So he goes to Oregon, and Oregon is able to tap into his potential. I don't know what it is with Oregon and getting the best out of their quarterbacks, but if you want to be a successful college quarterback, you go to Oregon. And Bo Nix, he was in the running for the Heisman this year. He may be shorter than what you want in an NFL quarterback, but that doesn't matter to me. Very, very athletic, very good arm. And again, Oregon just did their best with him. And Sam, I'll let you take over from this.
Yeah, so I think I don't think it's unreasonable, and I'm not saying anything to you, but I think the criticism for Bo Nix and his size, I mean, he's bigger than Caleb Williams, so he's roughly the same size. He's about an inch taller, roughly the same weight. So,
I was just trying to say that doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think size actually does matter. I think we're seeing a little bit with Bryce Young, in his ability to translate in the NFL. So I don't think we can continue to take
Yeah,
in
but
these
there's a
five
difference
eight,
between
five
somebody
nine.
that's like 6 foot or 6'1" between a guy that's barely 5'10". So
Right. I really like Bo Nix.
yeah,
I have him as number 5. I have Michael Penix at 4, but it's not a knock against Bo Nix for him being number 5. I like everything that he does. There is, some of the concerns that maybe it is Oregon and it's not the quarterbacks that make these guys look good. But if that's the case, then why hasn't all of Oregon's quarterbacks look like Bo Nix, right? Bo Nix was a Heisman contender. He has a good arm, not special arm, but he has a good arm, good enough for the NFL, I think. Which sounds like a knock, but I mean, a good enough arm for the NFL is good. He's mobile. He's athletic. He has got a quick release. He can do everything that you want from a quarterback.
yeah.
I think it's going to take some time for him to get up to the NFL speed, but I could see him as being one of those, that 15 to 5 range of quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Like he's never going to be one of the best guys, but he can sneak in, he can be a solid starter, and he can win you some games, with appropriate development. I don't think he's going to be that day one, but I think he has everything that you want from a quarterback.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that, this goes back to the did I see it in college? Yeah, I mean, he had a great year with Oregon. He just didn't run up against Washington twice. Then, it's a different conversation with Oregon.
And to add to that, he performed well against Washington too. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah,
He
exactly.
performed well against Washington. It's just Oregon wasn't able to stop Michael Penix in that offense, which, to be fair, the only team that was able to do that was Michigan.
Right,
And
right.
they had to be a special defense to do that. So again, it's not really a knock against him. But yeah, Bo Nix definitely has potential to be a starting quarterback in this league. In fact, I'll say this: I think he has a higher floor than JJ McCarthy as a starting
I think so
quarterback.
too. Yeah, I think so too. Um, I think he might be one of those that's he might be one of the forgotten quarterbacks. I don't want to say forgotten, but like you think of Caleb Williams, you think of Jaden Daniels with his athleticism. Drake May has been one of the guys who's been touted as the number 2 quarterback this entire year. Now things kind of up in the air with Jaden Daniels' performance. But Bo Nix has always been one of those guys who's, always been in the top 5 for the past 2 years as, hey, look out for Bo Nix on this draft class. So I think he
Yeah.
has potential to be one of the good quarterbacks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing with Auburn, if you want to knock him on that, how many times have we seen that where, you know, a coach and a quarterback just doesn't agree? It just doesn't work out. I mean, we see that happen everywhere: high school, college, NFL. Heck, we probably see it in rec if we pay attention to that.
Right. And honestly, him coming from Auburn to Oregon, there was a lot of hype about Bo Nix because from his time in Auburn, you saw the potential and you saw, okay, what could this guy develop into? And then he just didn't when he was at Auburn. So I was down on him when he came to Oregon. And then this past season, I was like, you know what? I see it with this guy. I think he has a lot of good traits. And I think he's one of the few that I think I don't want to like put my horse on him because I've done that in the past with Mitch Trubisky. Uh, but I think I can see him having a good NFL career.
It's funny that you say that about Mitch Trubisky because Trubisky started 13 games in college. Bo Nix has started 61.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
he
very
holds the
different, right?
record for the most starts by any college player. So again, if you want to knock him for that, you're more than welcome to do that. But again, what he showed on the field, he showed that he could take over a game. He showed that he could be a leader on a team. And if it wasn't for Washington, Oregon would have been in the college football playoff.
Oh,
And a lot of
absolutely,
that would have been from Nix.
definitely. All
Okay,
right.
since we've been talking about Washington, let's go on to Michael Penix. And I've been following him since Indiana, when he was at Indiana. He just got so unlucky at Indiana because you saw the talent. And especially if you were a Maryland fan, you saw the talent because he always seemed to have his best games of the season against the Terps. But he always was unlucky with injuries. I think twice he had knee injuries. Another season, I think, was a shoulder issue. So yeah, he really got unlucky with injuries. But in the COVID shortened season, First game was against Penn State, beat Penn State in overtime. And that really would put him on the map. But then again, the injuries happen. He transfers to Washington. Not only is he able to stay healthy, he thrives in that Washington system. He really brought Washington up. And you want to talk about all of those players that Washington has in this class? I think he brought them up to another level with his play, especially with those wide receivers.
I think so too. And he's one of the guys that I'm kind of like scratching my head at. Like the injury concern is real. And I don't want to downplay that. But watching him against Oregon and watching him in some of these big games, and he's just lighting it up. And some people have him as, the sixth quarterback and have him, third round pick. Like, how do you
not a
how
third
do
round,
you
just a sixth quarterback?
yeah, how do you watch him play in some of these games and say, okay, I don't think this guy has it? Like, he's clearly has an incredible level of talent, and you saw him elevate the talent at Washington. Yeah, his receivers were good receivers, but I don't think people realized how good they were till they had Michael Penix throwing him the ball.
You think it's a left-handed thing because because he's a lefty?
Yeah, nobody likes watching a lefty throw. And I hope he doesn't get compared to Tua because he's a lefty and Tua is a lefty because they're
No, no,
two
no, no. He is
totally
more
different
athletic than
quarterbacks.
Tua, and I think he's got a stronger arm because you saw how
Yeah,
strong his arm was,
yeah, he's got
and
a
he
much
showed it at the
stronger arm.
combine too. I mean, he really
Yeah,
showed it at the combine.
I think he does. He still needs some development in terms of
Oh yeah.
fundamentals and footwork and things like that. But I think he has, I think he has the it factor, right? When you're like, okay, can this guy take over a game? Yes, I watched him take over games before, and I watched him lead a team to winning some of these games. And Washington, I mean, they didn't have a bad defense, but they play in the Pac-12, and that's a different style of defense where you're not having a Michigan type defense in any of those Pac-12. Well, now it's the Pac-2, but um, yeah. So like I think he's incredibly talented. I think the injury concern is real. I think there are some fundamental issues with him. But I mean, you watch some of these games like the Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, and you watch that, and I can't imagine watching that and saying, "Okay, this guy can't play in the NFL."
And the semifinal against Texas,
Yeah,
they don't win that game without him. They do not win
right,
that game without
right.
him.
And I mean, it started out. It was you thought that one game was going to be a dog race, and it turned out to be a lot closer than you would think based off of the first quarter. Because weren't they up like 21-0 in the first quarter?
Something like that. Yeah, and the
Yeah,
defense almost blew it for them, but
yeah,
Penix in the offense, they got just enough to finish off the game.
yeah. So overall, my final rankings: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. That's my top six.
Agree on the top three. I have McCarthy, Nix, and then Penix, but it's literally the slightest thing. And with all 6 of these quarterbacks, all 6 of them are very different. Like you're talking about Caleb Williams, generational talent. Drake May probably has, besides Williams, has the highest upside of the quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels might be the most athletic quarterback and the most dynamic quarterback in this class. JJ McCarthy, just a winner and a national champion that maybe wasn't asked to do as much as the others, but still has a lot of talent. Bo Nix, a guy that
Long
had to go to
time.
the long timer that went to the right place at the right time. And then Michael Penix, another guy that went to the right place at the right time, but always had the talent to be a great quarterback, just was a late bloomer.
Right, right. And I think the concerns with the late bloom and all that, I think that's all reasonable. But outside of this top six, I still think it's a really deep quarterback class. And we were talking a little before we started recording. I could imagine that this class could have a lot of guys who stay around as depth players. Whereas I don't think necessarily you're going to have a ton of, top five quarterbacks coming out and being, 15-year starters for a team and things like that. But I think this class has a lot of talent that can stay around in the NFL for a while.
Do we have a Chase Daniel in this class?
I could imagine we do. The 15, 20-year backup who starts in 3 games and makes 80 million a year or 80 million in his career. Living the dream.
One of these guys that uh, Daniel Jeremiah and them talked about the combine was Spencer Radler. Spencer Radler, I think, is a great mid-round quarterback because this is somebody that doesn't do one thing great, but he does everything well. And that's what he did at South Carolina. Starts at Oklahoma, has a great first year as a starter, takes a step back, loses his job to Caleb Williams, transfers to South Carolina again, plays solid, and NFL teams and scouts are intrigued by him. And I know some people that watch QB1, they think, okay, this is just an immature knucklehead. But when you hear about what teams thought about him, they thought he was mature. You heard teammates, they thought how much they talked about how mature he was. Sorry, I couldn't think of another word, but probably got a bad rep from that. And it was when he was in high school. People changed.
Right.
It's been 5 years since that.
Right. I think he's one of those that's really interesting to watch because after his first year of Oklahoma, you're like, oh, this guy's going to go number one overall, and when he's draft eligible,
I
and
know.
then just yeah, I know you specifically never thought that, but there was that talk with him when he was after that year, and then his next year when things fell off the rails, lost his job to Caleb Williams, and truthfully, I mean, he wasn't having a terrible season, but Caleb Williams was just a great freshman.
He was him.
So he reasonably lost the job, and then he goes to South Carolina, and he doesn't do all that well, but doesn't play bad. And then he's kind of revitalized his image.
Yeah,
because he wasn't in the forefront the past couple of seasons at South Carolina. So he's one of those that I think could be a fourth round, probably maybe anywhere from third to five. And again, it depends on the situation. It depends on what happens. I could see him end up starting for a couple games in an NFL team, and because he has the talent, right, to play. So I could see him end up starting a couple games. I don't think he's ever going to be a team's answer, but I think he's going to be interesting to see where he goes and watch his career, just kind of with all of the notoriety he had.
If he could have a career like Teddy Bridgewater as a fourth round pick, I think people would be happy about that. A guy that could be a bridge starter, could play solid, get you to at least 500. I think people would be fine with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Another quarterback I want to talk about, and I cannot believe this guy was not invited to the combine, Talia Tagovailoa, Tua's brother, kind of the same way as Spencer Radler, where he doesn't do one thing great, but he does everything well. He's got an above average arm. He's got nice touch, decent accuracy, but he has some issues on the deep ball. And he's okay. Yes, he is a little bit shorter than what you want to see. And he's shorter than Caleb Williams. He's shorter than Bo Nix. But like Spencer Rattler, I could see him as a career backup. And I could see a team in the 4th, 5th, 6th round take a chance on him, see if he could be their backup for the next 10 years.
So I haven't watched as many Maryland games as you have, but I have watched quite a few. And he's a refreshing change of pace for Maryland fans because it was like, oh, hey, this is what competent quarterback play looks like.
Yeah.
Right. Like, especially playing against teams like Ohio State and Michigan and you didn't see him completely collapse under some of that pressure. Right. I think he has a chance. And the fact that he wasn't at the combine kind of shocks me.
He's the Big Ten's all-time leading passer. How do you leave him off the combine?
I think I would be surprised if he goes earlier than the 5th round. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes undrafted either.
Yeah, same here.
I think the sweet spot for him would be 6th or 7th round. But I think he has a chance to, he might bounce around a little bit, but I think he has a chance to stick around the league and, be a 2nd or 3rd quarterback for a couple of years. I think he has more talent than being skipped from the combine would suggest. Yeah. And he had a pretty good showing at the Senior Bowl too, right? Like,
yeah,
he played well in the Senior Bowl.
East-West.
Sorry, East-West. Yeah, he played well in East-West. So,
yeah, didn't he lead him on 2 touchdown drives?
Yeah, he had a good East-West showing. So I'm surprised that he was left out of the combine.
Yeah,
maybe it's because I'm a homer and I'm biased, but I think he has the talent to be drafted.
Now, it's not just those guys either. I mean, I was looking at Walter Football, their top 15. I could see all of these guys get drafted. A guy like Joe Milton. If Buffalo takes him in like the 6th round, I would not be shocked for them to have him be the backup to Josh Allen. Just have 2 strong arm quarterbacks.
Yeah. Joe Milton is, I think he's one of the most fascinating prospects because you see the arm and you say, oh God, this guy should light it up. And then he just does it, right? Like he has the strongest arm that I've seen out of any quarterback prospect, and you just don't see anything else from him. But it's fun to watch that and see what's going to happen with him.
Yeah.
So I like Joe Milton. It would be hilarious if he goes to Buffalo. But they did just resign Mitch Trubisky, so maybe they're just looking for a third string developmental piece behind those two. So
good point. Good point. They did resign Mr. Trubisky. I forgot about that. Sam Hartman, this guy started for a long time. First at Wake Forest, played last year at Notre Dame. I could definitely see him get drafted later on. Another guy that could definitely be a backup. Jordan Travis is going to be an interesting one because he tore his ACL. He was never going to be a first-round guy in my eyes, but I definitely feel like he could have been in that third, fourth round situation. Another guy that I think could stick around in the NFL for a long time. Devin Leary from Kentucky started at NC State, then went to Kentucky. Another guy started a lot of games, won a lot of games. Michael Pratt from Tulane is another interesting one.
Yeah, I think so too. Some of those names that you touched upon, Sam Hartman, if anyone's going to have a Chase Daniels like career, I could see him having, right? Like, that he's an interesting one because he's coming from Notre Dame.
It's such a fascinating story because you saw him on QB1 too, and he had an interesting story because this is somebody that went to a high school that was in their second year. They didn't win a game in their first year, and they go 7-3 with him as a starter in their second year of existence after not winning a game the previous year.
Right.
And didn't he just win a state championship the year before too? I think he did.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. But then I think then Wake Forest and then at Notre Dame. Anytime you have a Notre Dame quarterback, it's just one of those blue blood programs that you're like, oh, it's Notre Dame, going to be a great player. But I mean, Sam Hartman's not.
He was already a draft prospect coming out of Wake Forest.
Right. Sam Hartman, I don't think he's that great, but I think he could stick around in the NFL for a while.
Yeah, just so many quarterbacks here, and I didn't even mention Caden. I can't say this guy's name. And Carter Bradley, former starter at USC, transferred a couple of times, took over when JT Daniels went down. I can't think of how to pronounce his name.
Oh, I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, but Carter Bradley from South Alabama. There's always that one shocking quarterback. Like I remember when Bailey Zappi went before other quarterbacks when the Patriots took him. Carter Bradley could be that guy. He could be. We've seen it before. And then I believe it's pronounced Caden. He took over from JT Daniels. When JT Daniels went down in USC, had a fantastic season as a starter, went into the following year and kind of like Radler and a few others just didn't build on that. And unlike the others, when he transferred, he had a hard time. But such an intriguing prospect because you see the talent, but just didn't develop that way. Did you figure it out?
No. What's the quarterback? What school?
I didn't write down the school. That's my bad. Believe it was. I think it was Memphis. No, not Memphis. No, not Memphis. It was I can't remember. I just can't.
Oh, Caden Slovis at BYU.
Yes, BYU. Yeah, I knew. Yeah, I knew it was a team that wore a blue uniform, but I couldn't remember which one. Yeah, you know me, I just suck at pronunciation, and I don't like butchering names.
Yeah. I'm not very familiar. I don't watch a lot of BYU after Zach Wilson. I learned my lesson with him.
Yeah, but like I said, he took over for JT Daniels at USC and just and had a rough time after his first year as a starter. And then I mentioned Carter Bradley from, I believe, South Alabama.
Yeah.
And okay, so how many quarterbacks go in the first round? Let's have this discussion right now.
That's a fun question. How many quarterbacks go in the first round? I could see 4 going in the first round. I think only 3 should go in the first round. The 4 that I could see going in the first round is Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then JJ McCarthy. Even though I have him as number 6, I think because the fact that he's 21 and you can build with it, or he has potential, that's why I think he can go to the first round. I think only the first 3 of those are worth a first round pick, in my opinion.
I've got at least 4. Could all 6 be a first round picks? No, the last time that happened was 1983. And as it turns out, 5 of those quarterbacks ended up becoming decent in the NFL. It's still funny. Second quarterback in that draft class was Todd Blackledge, the only bust, and he went 7th overall. And he was over guys like Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, and Ken O'Brien, all of which turned out to be good quarterbacks, 2 Hall of Famers, and a guy that led the league in passer rating.
Well, to be fair, Jim Kelly did not go into the NFL right away. He did not want to play in Buffalo at first, and then eventually did come back after the USFL folded.
That's true.
I could see. I have a hard time seeing Penix or Bo Nix getting drafted in the first round. I think they have edge first round talent.
Yeah.
But I just don't think there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks that are draft. Like once you get towards the end of the first round, you typically aren't looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of teams that could just try to could go after a Kirk Cousins or could trade for Justin Fields. So we're not sure how this quarterback market is going to set up. Okay, let's break down these teams now. So in the AFC East, Buffalo, Miami, New York, no way. They are not taking quarterbacks at all early in this draft. I mean, you could say maybe the Jets, but no, they want to win now. They have Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to make him mad by taking a quarterback early.
That would be hilarious.
Now, the Patriots is an interesting one because the story broke right before we started recording of Mac Jones being traded to the Jaguars. So we know New England's getting a new quarterback. The question is, when? Do they go for a veteran or do they take somebody 3rd overall, or could they do both? Because there's talk about that too.
I like the idea of them taking a veteran and then taking Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, because whenever you're talking about like who do you take, I would rather take the best receiver versus the 3rd best quarterback. Right at number 3, I want the best player at their position. So I don't think it's unreasonable to want to go after a veteran and then to build a foundation around a potential young quarterback in the future. But we're also talking about quarterbacks, and you're nothing without a quarterback in this league, right? So if you have the option, it's not going to be Caleb Williams. They're not going to trade up for number 1. So it's either Drake May or Jaden Daniels.
To be fair, would probably be number 1 overall picks had it not been for Caleb Williams.
Right, exactly. And I think Drake May has talent, has potential, and I think Jaden Daniels has a tremendous floor, and he still has a good ceiling. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think you're going wrong with any of those picks. Me personally, and I'm not an NFL GM, and there's a reason why, I probably would take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3 over the 3rd best quarterback, but I don't think you go wrong with taking a quarterback at 3.
In the AFC North, Ravens, Bengals, and the Browns, I mean, they're financially locked in with their quarterbacks. I mean, Lamar just won MVP. Joe Burrow is going to be coming back from an injury. I would have him as a dark horse MVP. And well, we all know the Watson situation. We're not getting into that. But Pittsburgh's an interesting one because, look, Kenny Pickett did not have a good second year, and you can put all the blame you want on the offensive coordinator that you want, but truth be told, in his first 2 years, it just hasn't played as well as the Steelers would want him to play. So there's definitely going to be competition, but but it's probably more going to come from free agency than it is the draft, in my opinion. Because
Yeah, I think so too. There's a lot of people talking about the Steelers in Russell Wilson. I'm not a huge fan of that fit. Um, I like Justin Fields to go to the Steelers, but I don't think that the Steelers are interested in Fields, and I don't think they'd be willing to make that move.
we shall see. Down in the AFC South, let's see. Houston took a quarterback last year. Indianapolis took a quarterback last year. Jacksonville needs to sign Trevor Lawrence to an extension and just got their backup in Mac Jones.
What do you mean? They have their answers. They have Mac Jones on their team.
Let's just talk about this for about 30 seconds each. Okay, Jacksonville, was Mac Jones really your answer as a backup? I mean, he's in the same draft class as Trevor Lawrence. There's just no reason to do this. How well does he fit your system? One. Number two, did you see how he played last year?
Even if you have faith in him, like Mac Jones is not a quarterback that deserves giving up draft capital. Like your 6th round pick that could be a good special teamer is better to have on your team than Mac Jones.
Or the Patriots could turn around and draft an all pro there. We've seen it before.
Well, we'll see what happens with their GM-less situation in New England, but yeah, so no, it's dumb. It's a bad trade. But Jacksonville definitely doesn't need a quarterback. And the
Tennessee is rolling with Will Levis, who, you know what? Fine.
He showed flashes. He's got talent.
Yeah, and you don't have the team in place for a rookie quarterback. You need to build that entire team now.
Right.
Build a team and then figure out what you're going to do at quarterback. In the AFC West, Raiders, Broncos definitely could take a quarterback in the first round, especially after the Broncos just cut Russell Wilson, and Jimmy Garoppolo was just a disaster from the beginning for the Raiders.
Right. The Broncos are weird, right? Because they're very clearly burning it down to the ground, which is usually not the time or place that you want to bring in a rookie quarterback to try and start building up. Like they're still tearing down their team and trying to let it come fresh from there. So I could see them
no quarterbacks, so
they have no quarterback. So they need, Russell Wilson said he was willing to sign a veteran minimum free agent deal. So Russell Wilson to the Broncos? Joking. I'm 100% joking.
Yeah. He's joking, guys. He's just joking. Although Russell Wilson to the Raiders, that would be the ultimate slap in the face.
I see it, honestly. I don't think that would be bad. I just don't like Russell. I don't see how he fits in with any NFL team's culture, just because I think he's a little corny. But
but he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, so I guess it matters.
Is he though? Is he? He had a really good stint with Seahawks, but he's really tanking his chances now.
All right. Okay, we're gonna go.
This is another
conversation. Yeah, it's another conversation for another video that we could have. But with
Raiders, I like the Raiders drafting a quarterback, and I like them drafting a quarterback early with their team. I think that would fit in. I'm not. Where do they pick at? They're in the teens, aren't they?
Yeah, that 11 to 15 range. I don't have the draft order on me right now.
Yeah,
I think they are right after the Broncos. So they're right after the Broncos. So the Broncos don't take a quarterback. You can definitely see the Raiders do that. You know who I think they probably are going to take if they go quarterback? It probably is going to be Penix.
I would. Penix or Bo Nix, I think, would be a good fit for either.
But Penix is more like a Raider than the other quarterbacks. Left-handed, strong arm, does have concerns, but how many times have we seen the Raiders pull something off like this where they take a unique prospect like this?
Right. I think that's a good fit for him. I have a hard time seeing Penix going that early, but I think talent-wise, I don't think it's unreasonable.
Yeah. And not to mention, he will have a number one receiver because it looks like Adams is going to be staying with the Raiders, which is the right move for them if they want to have a rookie quarterback. Make sure you have a number one guy, at least early on with a veteran presence like that. That would be good for them. Okay. And we know the Chiefs and the Chargers, they're locked in. I mean,
They're good.
Chargers, Chargers, Herbert's kind of becoming another Phillip Rivers, but that's a conversation for another day.
It's so
And Mahomes
frustrating.
is
The
already
GOAT.
a top 10 quarterback of all time.
Top 10. He's a top 5 quarterback of all
I
time.
I am I'm a little conservative with when it comes to this kind of stuff. You know that.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. All right. In the NFC, Cowboys are going to get a contract extension done with Dak Prescott. Philadelphia just got a contract extension done with Jalen Hurts. Washington, we've already talked about this. They're going to go quarterback number 2. I think it's going to be Drake May. You also think it's going to be Drake May?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jaden Daniels.
I wouldn't either. I just think it's going to be May just because of the upside.
I am scared of Drake May going to Washington because I don't think that they'll be able to develop him. So I think he has a
That's
ton
fair.
of talent, but I think he has a high bust probability if he goes to a team like Washington.
Yeah.
And if Jaden Daniels goes there, it kind of gives me 2012 draft vibes where you have the generational Andrew Luck and then the uber athletic Robert Griffin III with Caleb Williams going 1 and then Jaden Daniels going 2.
What would be
And
interesting
then
on that is, oh, sorry, you finish and then I'll ask the question.
and then saying that would make Drake May the Ryan Tannehill of the draft class, who stuck around the longest. So
And performed well. I mean,
he performed well, yeah.
I mean, Tannehill had a very good NFL career.
He
But
did.
between Griffin III and Daniels, who would you say was the better quarterback? Was the better passer?
RG3. I think RG3 was the better passer. I think he had a better arm. His accuracy wasn't as good, but I think RG3 was the better passer.
If only he didn't get hurt, and if only Washington didn't screw it up.
Right, right.
And then the Giants, I don't know what the Giants are going to do this offseason. Just this is the biggest mystery out of the entire NFL, but they're financially tied to Daniel Jones. They can't get rid of him until next year.
Right, right. So
no way.
Giants are in a very weird spot because they're almost tearing it down,
but not quite.
Sorry, but it's not okay. Quite. They're in a weird spot. I don't think they're going quarterback.
More than likely, you're going to be picking in the top 5 next year, and we can get into that, and we'll get into that right at the end.
Right.
In the NFC North, Chicago, we already mentioned, more than likely going with Caleb Williams. How did Green Bay pull it off again? How did they pull it off again?
I don't know. I mean, Jordan Love, until like later in the season, I was like, I don't think he has it. And then he just kept
out of
playing
nowhere.
Well. Out of nowhere. Just kept playing well. And it was, okay, this guy, he's a good quarterback.
Detroit, they're going to wait. I mean, Jared Goff is going to be solid for another 3-4 years, in my opinion.
Jared Goff is so interesting because every single offseason since Jared Goff has been with the Lions, like, okay, well, he's just a stopgap. This is the year that they're going to get a quarterback to develop behind. And then Jared Goff just keeps playing so well. So, like, it doesn't make sense to move on from him yet.
Yeah. Now, I think they're going to have, they can get to the Super Bowl with him. I'm going to say they can get to the Super Bowl with him. So
I think so too.
No. And Minnesota, can they re-sign Cousins? We shall see.
I think it's time for them to move on. I think it's time for them to move on from Kirk.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the teams that take a Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix.
More than likely, I think that's where McCarthy goes.
Yeah,
if Minnesota cannot re-sign Cousins, more than likely that's where McCarthy's going to go. And Minnesota might trade up to make that happen.
Right, right.
In the NFC South, Atlanta, I've said it before, I will say it again. Please get a solid quarterback. Please get some competent offensive coaches, and you can make the playoffs. It is
they
playoffs
have so
or
much
bust
talent
for them. Playoffs or bust. There is no in between.
I think
get a solid quarterback. I don't care if it's Fields. I don't care if it's from the draft. Just get solid quarterback play.
I think they really need to make a good push for Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins, I mean, we know who he is, but Kirk Cousins with weapons can be a great quarterback.
And when you have a tight end like Kyle Pitts, and a player like Drake London, where all you have to do is throw the ball in his direction, he'll catch it. Yeah, you're going to be fine. Just
And
get
don't
solid
forget,
quarterback play.
they got a
Bijan
pretty good run.
Robinson.
They got a pretty good running back in that offense. They have weapons all over the place.
Yeah. Carolina, they need to find out how they're going to build around Bryce Young to get his confidence back up.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for another day. New Orleans, I could definitely see them being a team that trades back into the first round to get a quarterback late if one is falling. Like, let's say Michael Penix is there at 32 and the Chiefs want to get out. I could see New Orleans being the team that trades up.
That's a good spot. I think New Orleans would be, I don't think it would be unreasonable to think New Orleans would move up for a quarterback at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
Um,
if any team's going to do it, it's going to be New Orleans.
Yeah, they're in their own kind of cap universe, but I think getting a good quarterback on a rookie deal is going to be crucial for them to.
Not to mention, you don't have to play Penix right away because Derek Carr is still a solid quarterback in this league,
right?
And
right.
you can have him learn from him. I could definitely see it. I mean, the more I say it, the more I could see it happening. And Tampa Bay, they're going to do everything they can to re-sign Baker Mayfield. I don't think Mayfield's going anywhere.
I don't think Mayfield's going anywhere, but if he doesn't sign, I could see them going after a Bo Nix kind of quarterback.
Yes, definitely. And then in the NFC West, dark horse would be the Rams to take one, maybe in the second round.
Yeah,
I mean, a dark horse to do that. Not in first round. I don't think they would go first, but second, definitely.
I think the Rams, Matt Stafford surprised me. I thought he was done after his elbow injury last year, not last season, but the season before. But he had a good year this past year. So I think he's still got some juice and some gas in him. So I could see them going quarterback second, third round and getting someone who could develop a little bit and then seeing what they have with that guy.
Yeah. And of course, the Cardinals, they got Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is still good in this league. He's still good. He's still good. I mean, the Cardinals were one of the more competitive teams in the NFL, despite them being despite them having the fourth overall pick. And you know what? If it does go 1, 2, 3, that's Marvin Harrison Jr. all the way, and he's my top player in this draft. So if you get the number one player at number 4, and him being a great receiver, no less. Oh, man, Kyler Murray's going to have some fun next year, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Seattle, they're rolling with Geno Smith. I like it, but they got to get offensive line help for him. They're just not a team that can deal with a rookie quarterback because of that offensive line. So that's where they're more than likely going to go in the first round of this draft. And the 49ers, Brock Purdy just led them to the Super Bowl. And
I don't know. Is Brock Purdy the guy? I don't know if he can be the guy.
Are you kidding or are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm kidding. He led him to the Super Bowl. He was an MVP candidate. Of course he's the guy. Like, what are we doing here?
I just don't get it. It's the whole Mr. Irrelevant with him.
Right. If he was drafted 15th, if he was drafted where Mac Jones was drafted, there'd be zero questions about his ability to stay around in the league.
And he's another one of those, does everything well, but nothing great. And yet, he just led the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and they should have won the Super Bowl. But again, Kyle Shanahan couldn't get out of his own way again.
Couldn't get out of his own way, and he was playing the greatest quarterback of all time. Yeah. The thing, like, people knock Brock Purdy. They say, okay, well, he has Deebo Samuels, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, has Christian McCaffrey. Well, how is that his fault that his team is good? Like, he's doing what he needs to do, and they win games, and they went to the Super Bowl, and they had one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time.
Yeah, remind me, how good was Jimmy Garoppolo the year before with all those weapons? Was he anywhere near where Purdy was?
Not good. Not that good.
Yes. Okay.
Purdy's a good quarterback. They don't need a quarterback this year.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's look ahead to 2025, and it's probably going to come down to 2 quarterbacks in college: Shadir Sanders and Quinn Ewers. Either one of those guys could be the top quarterback in next year's draft.
They could be. I think there's a lot of question marks for them going into 2025. I think Quinn Ewers has some fundamentals that he has some issues with. It looks like his top half and his bottom half don't talk at all when he's playing football. And
But
then
don't
Shadir's
forget, he skipped his last year of high school, so he's still growing. He's still
he's
growing as he's sorry.
he has a lot of potential, right? I
Yes.
think he has the chance to put together a really good season. And the end of his season was good at Texas. It started off a little bit rocky. I mean, they beat Alabama, so it's not that rocky, but he really put it together more than I expected him. Um, I think Shadir Sanders has a lot of flash, but I need to see it again in another season. I think he was part of the reason why that Colorado team was competitive where they were. And they weren't a great team just in general. They were still learning how to deal with each other and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But he was legitimately the reason why that offense was clicking in the beginning. Um, so I think he has a chance to really build on a good season.
And the fact is, him being with his father and his father letting him know that he needs another year, it was smart.
Oh,
It's
it was
smart
so
of his
smart.
father to. I mean, the fact is, Dion being honest with his son about that, you don't see that often. That's why Dion, I think, is the right choice for Colorado. But again, that's a
Yeah.
discussion for another time. But still, I think Shadir could really put it all together in 2024. Same thing with Quinn Ewers. Those two, they're going to be interesting story. Another one, Cam Ward could probably get into that first round conversation with a great year at Miami. Carson Beck from Georgia, he'll be an interesting one. Drew Aller from Penn State, he's going to have eligibility left, but hey, we've seen it before. Will Howard from Ohio State, I don't think he ever would be in a first round conversation, but he could definitely raise his draft stock. Riley Leonard, who was at Duke, now is at Notre Dame. Jalen Daniels from Kansas, he missed almost all of last year. Now he's back healthy. If Kansas has another season like they have had the last few years, and Daniels has another really good season, he could be in the conversation to go early.
Yeah, one thing I want to touch about, just in general with this quarterback class, I think quarterbacks like Shadir Sanders waiting to coming out till next year makes so much sense with how much talent was in this class.
Yes,
Why be a medium sized fish in a big pond when you can be a medium sized fish in a tiny pond, right?
exactly.
So like he has the chance to be a big fish in a little pond next year because it's not going to be as talented of a class,
Not to
right?
mention show more consistency, like you said, that you want to see it for another season. First 2 years at Jackson State does great. First year at Colorado, not as great as what he did with Jackson State, but I think it spoke more of what he is as a quarterback because he was playing higher competition. And with Colorado going to, where are they going to next year?
I believe
Is it
they're
the,
in the Big 12.
yeah, but them going to the Big 12, that's just going to help him even more.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm excited to see this season coming up, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who you're not expecting that are going to make some surprises. I don't have any names specifically, but I think this is a quarterback class. Next year's class is right for some people you weren't expecting to kind of have good seasons and kind of get in that conversation.
Yeah, like another Zach Wilson, basically,
Right. Right.
with hopefully being a better quarterback than Zach Wilson.
Hopefully, actually being a decent quarterback in the NFL.
All right, Sam. Any final thoughts on the 2024 quarterback class?
I think you know pro days, I don't think we're going to learn that much from the pro days. So I think I'm really excited to see where these guys go and what teams, because I think this year is really a fit dependent quarterback class. I think a lot of these quarterbacks have a really good chance to be around for a while and play good football if they go to the right place. So I'm excited to see where they go.
And I'm just excited to see who takes them with what you said, because a lot of these quarterbacks, they need to go to the right place. And if a Drake May does go to Washington, is that the right place for him? If Jaden Daniels gets taken by New England, can he succeed there? JJ McCarthy, what team is going to get the most out of him? Can Michael Penix stay healthy? Which of these mid-round quarterbacks are going to be heroes 5 years down the line, 5-10 years? They're going to be heroes for their team because they have to fill in for the starter, and they end up leading their team to greatness.
Right.
All right, guys, those were our thoughts on the 2024 quarterback class. And Sam and I are going to work together to get the mock draft done for this channel. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sam, one more thing. In free agency, the Ravens will lose who?
Ravens are going to lose Patrick Queen. He's not going to be re-signed.
Ravens will also lose Geno Stone. I think
Geno
they
Stone,
can,
yeah.
I think they can replace him because they already have two very good safeties in Hamilton and Marcus Williams if he's able to stay healthy. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.